This episode is sponsored by the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. Looking for New Year's Eve plans? Don't miss Hollywood Casino's pre-New Year's Eve party with Purple Experience in the Event Center on Saturday, December 29th. Receive 2 complimentary drinks with each ticket purchased. Details and tickets at HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. The Trans-Siberian Orchestra brings holiday magic to Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. on December 23rd, just in time for Christmas. I caught up with longtime drummer Jeff Plate to discuss the band's biggest hits, from Christmas Eve Sarajevo to Christmas Cannon, which are both still played on Christmas radio stations every December to this day.
How you doing, Jason? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're talking because Trans-Siberian Orchestra is returning to Washington, D.C. at Capital One Arena on December 23rd, 2 times actually, 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. So depending on, what time you're getting on the road over the river and through the woods to Grandma's for Christmas, you can still, you can catch it either way. Hey, thanks for doing this. You and I spoke a couple years ago, I guess 2021 or something. But why is D.C., the nation's capital, the perfect spot right before Christmas? Do you intend it that way? You set it up to be near the, the national Christmas tree and stuff right before?
Well, that is a good point. I don't know if that was all part of the plan, but hey, it works out. It works out well for everybody, for the audience, for us. D.C. is one of those places that we've always loved playing. The audiences have always been fantastic. I remember back when we started, playing Constitution Hall several years in a row, and then as the show got bigger and TSO became more popular, we moved into the arena. But hey, you know what? It's as good a place as any to end up that little run there right before Christmas, and we're looking forward to it.
So not only is it Christmas Eve on the 23rd, but that's also Festivus, baby. So are you going to be doing the feats of strength or airing of grievances, or you get the pole out of the crawl space?
No. We're not going to touch any of that. We're not going to touch any.
No Seinfeld references even. You could yell Happy Festivus to the crowd. That might be about it.
I might do that. I just might do that. When I get introduced, I will say Happy Festivus. And
yes, a Festivus for the rest of us. That's great. But in all seriousness, this one's celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Lost Christmas Eve, which I guess was the third in TSO's Christmas album trilogy there, I guess. But isn't it also the number 20 is a pretty big deal? So it's the 20th anniversary of that. Isn't it also you're celebrating like 20 million tickets sold and 20 million donated to charities?
Yeah. So I think last week in Denver, the 20 millionth tickets were sold. And the fans that did that received a plaque and some other stuff. It's quite the number when you think about it. And just thinking about, I mentioned Constitution Hall, but I mean, even before that, when we started in 1999, we're doing smallish theaters. We only did 7 shows that year, and now we're upwards of 110 shows. We got 2 different touring groups on the road for the season, TSO East and TSO West. And we play too close to 1 million people every year between the 2 groups. So
that's crazy.
It really is. It's amazing. You see these numbers every year and they keep building. But when you see the 20 million mark, it's like, wow.
Yeah, it is pretty
amazing
crazy.
what's happened. But along with that is our creator, Mr. Paul O'Neill. Mm-hmm. He instituted a charitable donation for every ticket that we sold from the very beginning. So we've been donating $1 per ticket sold to a local charity. We let the presenting radio station figure out what charity that is because they know what's going on in their own towns and everything. But so we've reached a $20 million mark in charitable donations across the country. And that is also something that you see growing every year, and hitting this number just really, really makes us proud. We've helped a lot of people along the way. Paul O'Neill, he always said that Christmas is just such a fantastic time of the year for a lot of people. And for some people, it is a struggle. So this directly, the audience members are involved in this. They are helping somebody in their community, maybe somebody they even know. And these numbers just keep building every year, and it's just a testament to the vision of Paul O'Neill and what he created, and just how big and popular TSO is now and is growing still.
I love the charitable part of it because yes, we gotta, just like, you sit down, you watch, Dickens' A Christmas Carol or something, you gotta remember the Dickensian, the inequalities here, and not a lot of people are struggling. I know the local Ford's Theater, when they do Christmas Carol, they always take a donation at the end. So I love that TSO has a similar, philanthropic, charitable heart behind this whole tour, and has from the beginning $1 for every ticket. That's great. 20 million to charities. Bravo, sir. That's awesome. Well, I want to get into some of the big TSO, Christmas albums and the songs we'll hear, etc. But even rewind back before that, I want to know about, you growing up. Well, you were born in, well, it wasn't Bedford Falls, but it was Montour Falls. And you were born in '62 up in upstate New York. It's kind of near Ithaca, New York, right?
A little bit
Ish.
south of Ithaca.
Okay.
We're right at the southern end of the Finger Lakes. Seneca Lake is about 15 minutes from my home.
Seneca Falls is where they think Bedford Falls was based on. It's a Wonderful Life. They think that Capra might have been inspired by Seneca Falls, so not far from Montour Falls.
So Seneca Falls is actually at the other end of the lake. That's like
Yeah.
a probably about a half-hour drive up to the end of the Seneca Lake. But beautiful country up there. So Montour Falls is where I was born. I was actually raised in a town called Horseheads, and country boy.
Yeah.
I've got an 85-acre farm, which actually I don't really farm anymore. I lease it out to a local farmer because it's just too much work at this point. But the environment back then was, it was just so wide open. I had such an open space and such freedom to do so many things. Got into drumming when I was really young. Of course, I had no neighbors to really that was going to bother, so that that worked out pretty well. I could just play whenever I wanted to, and my parents were extremely supportive of all this. So,
Nice.
so yeah, I mean, as a kid, I was very athletic. Played baseball. Had a little health incident where my hip
Oh no.
literally fell apart when I was 13 years old,
What
and
position were you?
shortstop and pitcher.
Oh, nice,
And,
nice. But
I
so
had
some
to
hip problems, and then you couldn't play, you couldn't ball out anymore, so you just shifted specifically to drumming.
I couldn't do sports anymore. And then I saw Kiss on the midnight special, and I was like, all right, so much for baseball. I'm going to do that. And
I love it.
and then I was on a mission, and that really started it. So
It's just a different kind of wooden stick. Instead of a Louisville Slugger, you got, a couple pair of drumsticks. But probably a ton of white Christmases up there too, like upstate New York, right? Like growing up, Christmas was probably like a picture print of Curry and Ives.
it was beautiful. I loved it. And I still live there now.
Nice.
I love the four seasons. Obviously, our winters are quite a bit different than what they used to be. But
Yeah.
yeah, man, when I was a kid, we had snow from Thanksgiving to the end of February.
Lake
And
effect snow, man. Lake effect.
lake effect snow, feet of snow, sometimes literally getting snowed in, that I don't
Yeah.
think anybody really gets snowed in anymore, but
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
it is a part of my youth. And I just think about that postcard kind
Yeah.
of kind of scene, and getting up in the morning, Christmas Day, there's all the tree and all the presents, you look outside and there's just snow everywhere. It was awesome.
I love it. All right, so that's we painted a picture. People can probably picture it in their minds. That's the beauty of radio, podcast, the audio. The theater of the mind. They're seeing the snowflakes falling in your childhood. But then you mentioned you leave. You can't pitch or play shortstop anymore, so you pick up the drumsticks. You see Kiss. You're getting all inspired. Tell us. So you joined the heavy metal band Savatage with a V, Savatage in '94. It was kind of like a bittersweet thing, right? Wasn't Chris Oliva, the original band member, was killed by a drunk driver, and his brother John, what I guess, left shortly after. So that's how you joined for Dead Winter Dead. Is that right?
So yeah, leading up to that, when I got out of high school, I just like I need to get out of here if I'm going to do what I want to do. So I went to Florida, and that was a disaster. Came back home. I went to Boston, and in Boston, I began working with a guitarist named Matt Leff, and we had a band called Wicked Witch, and we brought this singer to Boston from L.A. This man named Zach Stevens, and worked with Zach beginning in 1990. We did a couple demos, did a lot of shows, did a lot of playing around, and never got that elusive record deal or anything. But Zach ended up getting the job singing for Savatage, the band you just mentioned.
Mm.
Uh, John Oliva and Chris Oliva had formed this band in the early 80s. This band was also produced by Mr. Paul O'Neill. He was one of the songwriters, the lyricist, producer, manager, kind of oversaw everything. But in 1992, Zach did his first record with Savatage called Edge of Thorns. 93, actually, it was. I think it was released. That same year, well, Zach came into the band because John Oliva stepped down as lead vocalist. So they brought Zach in and did the Edge of Thorns album. Band had a new resurgence. They were, had the song Edge of Thorns was actually added to like a record number of rock stations around the country at that time.
Mm.
And then unfortunately, Chris Oliva, founding guitarist, got killed in a car accident.
Mm.
And at this point, John Oliva, the lead singer, had stepped down from the band just because of the road, and he had other things he wanted to do with his music and his career.
Yeah, and he
And
just lost his brother too. Oh,
yeah, and an original drummer, Steve Wacholtz, when John left the band, Steve kind of said, you know what, Savatage is just not Savatage to me anymore.
mm.
And the band had struggled, did some great albums, but the industry, it's a tough business. And Steve decided I'm going to step out of this also. I call up Zach Stevens in the spring of 1994, just, to see how he was, personally. But he said, hey, Savatage is going to continue. The guys have heard our demo tapes, the Wicked Witch demo tapes. They love your drumming. Come down to Florida. You're in the band. And I was like, I just about fell on the floor and went down to Tampa that spring, met John, met Paul O'Neill, reconnected with Zach. They were doing the Handful of Rain record at the time and already had done all the music. So I was coming in basically to be the drummer on the following tour. But that's where I became an official member. We did Japan Live 94, and then the following year we recorded Dead Winter Dead, the album you mentioned just a minute ago. And that's where everything really just took off for Savatage. And it was also where TSO literally was born. Christmas Eve Sarajevo 1224 was the song that Paul used to launch TSO. And, here we are 30 years later. It's just amazing what's happened.
Yeah, because Christmas Eve Sarajevo 1224 was, yeah, obviously the concept album about the Bosnian War and all that stuff. That was originally on the Savatage album, Dead Winter Dead, and then you brought it back for that first TSO album, right? Well, I want to get to that in 1 second, but I have to say it's hilarious that it started with demos from Wicked Witch, because Wicked is all in the movie theaters and stuff now, and so you you guys did it way back then. But
Yeah, we actually had Bob St. John, who produced the band Extreme.
yeah, oh,
Uh,
of course.
he was kind of in the area that we were in on the South Shore of Boston, and we went to
Wow.
his studio and really, really, real well done demo tapes. But like I said,
Yeah.
and it was a time too when grunge had just come along, so the music scene literally was all of a sudden it was just flipped upside down. It was
Oh
like,
yeah.
wow, bands like us don't we're not faring too well anymore. But
I was
but
just
anyhow,
talking to Kip Winger about that. He was like, as soon as grunge came, our band, we were basically done overnight, and it took a while to claw back. So,
it's crazy, crazy. But
but
Sabotage,
yeah,
through all of this, survived.
yeah,
And the band literally had many legitimate reasons to fold it in and
yeah,
didn't. Paul and John wanted to keep it going. So, but Christmas Eve Sarajevo 1224
yep,
became an instant holiday hit. And like I
yep,
said, this was the vehicle that Paul used to create TSO. So we had this resurgence for Savatage over in Europe. It was amazing. And then we had this TSO thing happening in America at the same time. It was a very interesting time, but man, I landed in the right place at the right time, and I've been there ever since.
you definitely did. All right, so now it's officially sort of shifting, rebranding, spinning off, whatever you want to call it, into Trans-Siberian Orchestra, TSO. You're drumming. I guess that iteration, I guess, officially forms around, I guess, 96, I guess. And with Paul O'Neill, the late, great Paul O'Neill, sort of producing the brainchild of all of this. Not to be confused with the Yankees World Series champion Paul O'Neill. Although I guess Paul was from New York. New York. There's a lot of synergies here. But anyway, so
Yeah.
Paul O'Neill brings together this newish lineup, bringing over You from Sabotage, etc., for the first of the holiday trilogy albums, Christmas Eve and Other Stories in 96. I guess it goes platinum. And as you're saying, Christmas Eve Sarajevo, I guess you retitle it Christmas Eve Sarajevo 94. And man, just I guess dive into, because everyone knows that from the radio. It's still played every holiday all over the country. But go into musically a little bit. Like, what is it? Isn't it like a little bit of God Rest You Merry Gentlemen on the cello, and then by the end it's like full on erupting in like a, I guess it's almost like a Carol of the Bells, but on a shredding guitar. But how would you describe it musically, the sections?
Well, it's those two pieces of music
Yeah,
edited together. And
I love it.
Paul and John Oliva were working on music for Broadway. They had their sights on theatrical releases, and had been working with another man named Bob Kinkle. And so the three of them really kind of collaborated on this song. Although Paul's vision for TSO existed years before I ever met him. And his desire to release this song, put this song together and release it, was also years before I ever met him. He just finally, this was the right opportunity for him to do this. It fit into the format of the Sabotage album. Like you mentioned, it was a concept story about the war going on in Bosnia.
Yeah.
But that musically, I remember being in the studio, and I'm still the new guy, so I'm just kind of standing at the back of the room watching and listening, but we were all scratching our heads when Paul was insisting on this Christmas song. And he could see much further down the road than we could. He knew he had something.
Yeah.
And there was no doubt when we heard the final version, wow, that is awesome. But it's like it's a Christmas song on a Sabotage record. This is still kind of strange.
Yeah.
But lo and behold, that song just took off and laid the groundwork for TSO. So
Yeah.
with the Broadway-ish music that he was already working on, the idea was to elaborate more on that,
Mhm.
but develop around this song. So Christmas
Yeah.
Eve, The Stories was released in 1996. He brought in a number of vocalists that he knew, some other instrumentation, and the man created something magical. He really developed a style and a sound that nobody else had at the time.
Dude, I'll never forget hearing it the first time because I was born in '84, so I was growing up. I think but Carols of the Bells have been around, and I think I'd probably seen it in like Home Alone or something, you know what I mean? But then like after that, like yours comes out mid '90s, and all of a sudden it's a guitar going dun, 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 dun. I remember being like, "What is this?" You had to crank your car up at Christmas, you're like, it's like you're rocking out to a Christmas song. Like it changed everything. I love it. This,
Up to that point, so many artists have done Christmas songs,
yeah,
rock artists, pop artists, etc., but they were always kind of safe.
right.
And this one, even though it starts out fairly safe, when the band kicks in, it was like, wow, where did that come from? So it really took people by
Yeah.
surprise. It was refreshing to hear something that was so different in the holiday format.
It's wild, yeah, because Christmas, which is one of the things I love about this time of the year, is you'll hear, what other time of the year are you going to hear, Bing Crosby back to back with Gene Autry, Mariah Carey, and TSO. You know what I mean? It's just back, boom, 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 back and forth. It's all like time and genres. It transcends everything this time of the year. But you go from Bing Crosby to TSO, like your radio is like exploding. It's crazy the the shift. But actually, isn't Carol of the Bells itself? Isn't it like a Ukrainian New Year song? I don't even know how you pronounce it. Shedrik,
Yes.
Shedrik.
Yep, that's exactly what it is.
Which now they invaded Ukraine. Russia did, and now there's a war going on. And I'm not going to make you talk politics, but in general, the idea that it was about the Bosnian war, and here we are all these years later, and now in this Ukrainian, sort of New Year's song it's oddly
Yep.
even timely again, right?
It's a sad situation. It's a sad situation, but
Yep.
with that song and everything else that Paul did, he had a very clever way of taking these traditional holiday themes and weaving them in and out of his own music.
Yeah.
So TSO, if you never heard TSO, and came to one of our shows, you would recognize a lot of the melodies right out of the gate.
Yeah.
There's something familiar there throughout the whole show. So he was very clever in how he put all this together. But yeah, his a style and a sound like nobody else had heard, and it's pretty cool to be a part of it.
Absolutely. And then of course, and then that album also had This Christmas Day, like so many great songs on there. So everyone check out that album. But of course, the second in the Christmas trilogy album, we got to hit the Christmas Attic. That came out in '98. I guess went probably double platinum because you guys were like household names at that point. The one everyone remembers that is still played to this day is called the Christmas Canon, which of course is a take off of Pachelbel's Canon. Everyone, listeners, I promise you hear it at weddings all the time. I think even I remember Robert Redford used it in his 1980 Best Picture winner, Ordinary People. He plays it in the beginning of that. So we've heard it a million times, but tell me the idea of sort of turning it into a Christmas version with the choir singing and all that. What was the idea? How did that idea come to y'all?
So the first rendition of that with TSO was a children's choir with piano, and it was just a very simple format. And that this was on Christmas Attic, and then forward to our next album, The Lost Christmas Eve,
Yeah.
Paul recorded Christmas Canon Rock, which was still using the same melody, the same idea, the same lyrics, but just basically turned it into a rock ballad.
Mm.
And it's one of our most popular songs. I mean, Christmas Canon, I believe in Sarajevo are two of the most downloaded Christmas songs in history. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
That's the
But
one that's like on this night, on this Merry Christmas night. That's with the choir, right? On that one.
there you go.
All
There you
right,
go. That's
gotcha,
it.
gotcha. Well, I got to remind our
Yeah.
listeners, when we're just, it's a spoken word conversation. We got to remind them which one we're talking about.
Oh,
But there's
Christmas
two
Attic.
versions, you're saying. Well, there was the first on Christmas Attic, and then the second one kind of rocked it up a little bit on the Lost Christmas Eve.
Yes.
That's what you're
Yeah,
saying. All right.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's the one we're celebrating. That was in 2004, the third Christmas album. So that's the one we're sort of celebrating the 20th anniversary here with this Lost Christmas Eve tour here. One more off of that one then, since that's what we're celebrating. Tell me about Wizards in Winter. That was also on that one. Whenever I hear the title, I think of that Winter Warlock in that old stop. The old
Yes.
Santa Claus is coming to town. That's what it was.
I love those old shows. I mean, that's to me, that's Christmas. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and all that stuff. It's just
The yeah,
I
the
love
Rankin and Bass stop motion, I guess is what you would call it. Yeah,
the
yeah.
Burgermeister, Meister Burger, and all that
There
stuff.
will be no toys. And Chris,
You're good. You
well, what was?
know.
Well, we all grew up on those. Exactly what I said about how the radio stations this time of year play. There's no time and no genre. Same as with that, right? Because you get all
Yeah.
these great old stop motion. Rudolph was like 64, and
Oh
Santa
yeah.
Claus is coming down as 70, and you got Fred Astaire voice, doing the. You know what I mean? It's just like
For lives,
Burl Ives for Rudolph and Fred Astaire and Mickey Rooney on the Santa Claus one. But yeah, it's
Yep.
just I think it just introduces like new generations to the they're watching Charlie Brown or Boris Karloff doing the
Yeah.
Grinch, and it's just like this time of year transcends time, man. I freaking love it.
Yep. Yep. The age of innocence, everything
Yeah,
was so simple back then, but there was a
right.
magic to it. But
Yeah.
Wizards of Winter, that was something that Paul and Bob Kinkel worked on. And here again, when they got done with the song, I was like, wow, this is awesome. This is awesome. But that song kind of took on a life of its own also. It became like one of the more popular um songs used for the house lighting groups
Mm,
around the country. And
right.
and there was a man in Cincinnati who had his house all lit up and was had it coordinated with Wizards in Winter. Well, this became viral. And then Paul and the management team got a hold of him and we, brought him out to the show in Cincinnati. And one thing led to another, but we ended up Wizards in Winter and this whole concept was used by Miller Lite for their NFL primetime sponsor
Love it.
that year. And all of a sudden, that song was on ESPN like every half hour. And
Everyone knows it now.
oh my God. So along with that and just the rising popularity of TSO, the popularity of the shows themselves, that is when this thing just exploded. And I can remember, I'm pretty sure it was Cleveland, but we had sold out two shows on a Friday and two shows on a Saturday. And I just remember walking on stage at one point, going, I just can't believe what's going on. All of a sudden we are in these major arenas. They are jam-packed twice a day.
Yeah.
And it was so cool to be a part of this. And for me to sit in the middle of this as the whole thing grew. When we started in 1999, it was like a 24-foot box truck and some lights and a star curtain and a fog machine. And here we are 5, 6 years later doing these numbers that we're doing in these arenas. It just blew my mind. But we have been on this pace ever since then. And it's just amazing that TSO is still growing and becoming more popular every year.
It is great. You're synonymous with the holidays at this point. Hey, you've been generous with your time, but I did want to give you a second to plug some of your non-Christmas albums. Like there was Beethoven's Last Night, Night Castle, Letters from the Labyrinth. Did you want to, invite them to do it if they love your Christmas stuff? Invite them to do a deeper dive into that back catalog.
Sure. I mean, it's the same style. It's obviously it's non-holiday, but the Beethoven's Last Night CD, that is one of my favorite TSO CDs out of all of them.
Yeah.
Paul just had a really cool story with that, a lot of really cool music. Really fun putting that one together. And we actually toured that album. God, it's had to be 12 years ago. I think it was about the same year, the last time that we did the Lost Christmas Eve, actually. But anyhow, fans just love that tour also. And that's, hopefully someday we'll be able to do something with that again. But yeah, that along with Night Castle, Letters from there's just so much good music. And we try, obviously when we do these TSO winter tours, it's based around one of the albums. This
Right.
year's The Lost Christmas Eve. So we're doing that in its entirety. And then we try to fill out, the intro and then the back half of the show, taking from some of these other albums and doing some of these non-holiday pieces. And there's so much to choose from, but so many great pieces of music, the stories, the lyrics, all of the above. It's really good stuff.
Absolutely. Final seconds. I know the band has sort of reinvented itself after enduring some tragedy. I know in 2017 that the great Paul O'Neill that we've been raving about, sadly was found dead, and also the bass player David Z was killed in a tractor trailer accident the same year. So,
Yep.
just a
Terrible.
terrible, terrible year for TSO. But how did you all sort of pick yourselves back up, keep going after such heartbreak? And Paul probably always knew that this music would outlive him, you, me, all of us. Like this music's gonna go on forever. So does this music keep him and his spirit alive regardless? I mean, it's timeless.
Yeah, of course. And he said that to us all the time. TSO was going to outlive us all, passed on for generation and generation, which I've seen right before my eyes. These kids that used to come to the autograph line in the year 2000 are now coming to our shows with their kids. So
Yeah.
it just keeps going. But yeah, I remember that night that I got the phone call about Paul, and man, I sat down with my wife and I said, this could be it.
Hmm.
What are we going to do?
Yeah.
So obviously we had to let the dust settle and let the family, sort some stuff out. And Paul's wife and daughter, who had been with him from the very first note of all this, said, you know what, Paul did not invest all this time and energy into this to let it fade away. We're going to keep this going. There is some real sadness every year when we show up to rehearsals, because that that is where the true Paul O'Neill really came out. He was just so meticulous about every single detail of the show, where people stood on stage, what color light that was, you name it. There was a magic, and there was also a chaos to the way he went about things, but it's what made it so special. And here again, Paul said this would outlive us all. We did not expect it to be without him, but the man was true to his words. He succeeded in what he set out to do, was to create something timeless. And hey, every year we do these tours, we're thankful it just keeps happening. But I see it in the audience. This thing has become tradition for millions of people, not just coming to our shows, but listening to our music, throughout the holidays and, for some throughout the year for that matter. But to see it going from adults to children to their children and then grandparents, all of the above, it just really is a magical thing to be a part of. And, carrying on his legacy is something we all take very seriously. And hey, up till now, these tours have really been doing well. Paul left us in a really good place. We have a lot of great material. He set TSO up for success, and he surrounded himself with some very, very good people in management, in production. Myself and a few others, Chris Caffrey, Johnny Middleton, Al Petrelli, we've been here from the first note. So we all know what we need to do. And he gave us the tools to do that. And, we go out there every night. It's just, we got to do this for Paul. We wouldn't be here without him. So we're all very proud of it, all very sad. And then, of course, that year, a couple months after that, losing Dave Z, that was just horrible. Just horrible. I mean, it was terrible losing Paul, but Dave was a young man and just such a life force. He had such an energy, and the way that all happened was just terrible. But hey, this is life. We all go through these things, and just when you think you're about as low as you can get, you find this will to just keep it going. We got to keep going, guys.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that, the holidays can be kind of hard if they've lost family members as well. So a lot of our listeners can relate. But you know what?
Yep.
It's a bittersweet time because you remember the good memories and the good holiday memories and the music and everything lives on. It's eternal. Like Paul is forever frozen in time. You know what I mean? He's going to be around forever
Exactly.
in this music. So
Exactly.
hey, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to see it and hear all of these great Christmas songs and a few others that you mentioned here. Again, everyone, it's the TSO is going to be coming to Capital One Arena on December 23rd. Two shows, 3 p.m. and 7 p.m., depending when you're getting on the road to go, celebrate with family and friends or whatever. So don't miss it. Thank you so much for joining us.
You got it, Jason. Take care, buddy.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.